When I was around 13 years old, I remember getting into an argument with my parents one evening in the house. I was angry about some rule that they had, and that rule did not allow me to do something that I wanted to do. I'm pretty sure I told them that they did not love me because of this rule, that they did not care about me. If they did, they would have let me do whatever I wanted to do. I blamed them for my unhappiness in that moment. By the way, just as kind of to put this out there, I had great parents, and I'm very appreciative of them, and they were looking out for my best. So in my anger in that moment, I said I didn't want to follow their rules, as some 13-year-olds may say on occasion. So my dad said, he responded with, "Well, no one's forcing you to be here." So I entered into that. He put that little hook out there. I got caught. I entered into that and I said, "Well, then I don't want to be here and I don't want to live underneath your rules." So I said, "I am going to leave the house. I'm going to run away and to live my best life free of these rules." I can remember getting up from the table, and I told them I was leaving. My parents asked me if I wanted to take anything with me, and of course, in my stubbornness and pride, I said, "No, I don't need anything." My parents made believe like they were not watching and let me walk out of the house into the darkness of night to start my journey to freedom. When I left the house, I started walking down the neighborhood street, and I quickly realized my vulnerability. What am I going to do? Where am I going to stay? I can't live on my own. Then, in my pride and anger, I also went in my head to blaming my parents for all of this. My parents let me walk about 400 yards down that neighborhood street while they watched from the window in the house before they got in the car and pulled up beside me and asked me if I wanted to come back home. I was relieved that they came to my rescue. There were hugs and kisses, tears and forgiveness, and all was right again. I had a place to stay the night. There was something that happened in that moment. I realized how dependent I was on my parents, how much they cared for me and provided for me. And in that short but very long 400-meter walk, I realized how lonely it was when I tried to be independent and rebel against my dependence on them. I experienced very personally our first reading, the effects of sin, of rebelling against dependence on my parents, who were God's representatives in my life. God sets up this beautiful, loving environment for Adam and Eve. Their only requirement or rule, actually really a beautiful invitation, is to totally trust and be dependent on God, who provides abundantly for them. Once they rebel against that radical dependence they are called to, they hide. Just like my parents came to get me, God searches them out. "Where are you?" he calls out. Then, upon finding them, they enter into that blame game. Adam blames Eve and God, and Eve blames the serpent. Division and separation begins and continues after that. We are designed to be dependent on God. Our first reading and the gospel remind us of this. Those who do the will of God are my brother and sister, Jesus reminds us in the gospel. Sin is rebellion against this dependence. We come to Mass for many reasons, but the underlying reason to them all is recognizing our dependence on God and to place dependence on God. I don't know where you are at in your life. I don't know what you are going through. But in the best of times, in the most boring of times, in the worst of times, we are invited to say, God, we need you. We place our trust in you, and we desire to be dependent on you. Amen.